Today on Scaling SASE Ops, I'm speaking with David Willis, the VP of Technology Alliances at Netskope. And his job revolves around building integration and joint go-to-market strategies with technology partners that are focused on solving the modern security challenges of today. And we're going to be talking with David today about how SASE Delivery Engineering is critical for improved user experience and faster adoption. David, thank you for being here.
It's really great to be here, Gabrielle. Thanks for the chance to speak.
I've got a bunch of questions ready that I want to talk with you about today. And I think really where I want to start is where we are at with SASE today. And so from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges that customers are facing right now when they're migrating from legacy architectures to SASE?
There are many challenges, not the least of which is it's really hard to ship physical hardware everywhere and to swap it out easily. We talk to thousands of enterprises every year that have sometimes tens of thousands of devices. And enabling them to go from one connection to another is just really tricky. And so what we want to do is help them ease that operational friction and ensure that they can get as much out of those devices as possible as they rehome them without having to hopefully replace them to get the best security outcome as possible. Netskope is actually a SASE vendor as well, so we understand how critical it is that customers are able to take advantage of these technologies to get the very best performance that they can, because most enterprises are in fact global, and these users need to be able to connect to these critical services with maximum security and minimum performance hit. So if I would summarize, I think it's keeping that operational friction low, enabling these connections to be operating performantly and continuously with high availability, and making sure that users are getting security throughout that entire experience.
So shifting gears a little bit here, in your role as VP of Tech Alliances, you work with a lot of partners, obviously, us included. And so how do you view the role that SASE OpsLab and your other partners are playing in easing that transition for customers?
Look, security and networking is it's a collaboration effort. It's a collaborative effort. Most companies have tens, if not dozens, of different security stack solutions and networking solutions, and they all have to work together. So where SASE OpsLab is really helping us work with our partners, and in some cases, I'll be honest, our competitors, right? But we want to make sure that the customer's needs are met. So the value here is that SASE OpsLab is able to not only instantiate tunnels at scale, which is tricky, and oftentimes requires this kind of outside understanding of how both systems need to work. So by providing that sort of intelligent overlayer or fabric, SASE OpsLab is able to make sure that a solution that maybe does not out of the box work with Netskope is able to spin up those tunnels to our services, discover the best place to route those tunnels, and then monitor those tunnels on day two. So when you think about this, what it enables us to do is create this very scalable framework where customers have multiple choices of their devices of choice, and that they're able to get all of these different solutions to communicate with Netskope from a day zero, day one, and day two perspective. All of that means that our customers are able to use the devices that they want and deploy them as they need and rehome them to Netskope very easily, which is great for us, because the last thing we want is an IPsec or a GRE tunnel configuration being the reason Netskope is not able to work with our partners and our customers. So it's a huge enabler for us, and more importantly, it's a big operational savings to our joint customers.
And speaking about customers, do you think that customer experience, specifically around delivery and migration, is going to rise in its importance as a critical component in their SASE vendor selection process?
I think rise is the wrong word. I think it already is the top consideration. Again, these are appliances that have been deployed into thousands of locations for the largest customers. And so they can't just flip a switch necessarily and move it. What they're looking for, and physically move it, what they're looking for is a software solution that enables them to take advantage of what they had and rehome them. And if that doesn't happen, I know for a fact, in several occasions, it has been a huge obstacle for us to overcome. It doesn't matter how great our technology is. If that customer can't take their existing networking framework and route that traffic easily to us, it is a huge barrier to overcome. So that's why I jokingly said, I think we're already there, right? Of course, there's all kinds of other services and requirements that these customers are going to have. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going through this operational requirement to begin with, right? If Netskope wasn't this great security solution that met their particular needs, they wouldn't be moving the tunnels over. But if they can't spin those tunnels up and then make sure that the tunnels are working and that the user's experience is great, that is going to be just as bad. It doesn't matter if you're successful at day 0 if day 1 you fail. It doesn't matter if day 1 is great if you can't get to day 0, right? So both are critical components. And again, this is why I get so excited about SASE OpsLab, because you've created this framework that enables us to really scale and have these critical interoperational points of functionality between many different vendors that we see. There's lots of companies that can send traffic to us thanks to their devices and thanks to the ubiquitousness of IPsec and GRE tunnel technology. So we need to know that we can partner with a platform that can accommodate all of those different idiosyncrasies, not only in implementation, but of course in the monitoring and instantiation. So yeah, we're already there. It's critical.
Yeah, and speaking about scaling, so at Netskope, you have a strong channel focus, right? And so what strategies are you implementing to really empower your partners to be able to operationalize SASE at scale for their customers?
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Gabrielle, because it really is at the root or the touchstone of Netskope's goal in working with partners is to make sure partners are part of every relationship and every sales motion, because there's things that they can do that Netskope can't, certainly not at scale. And one of those is acting as a partner service delivery organization. So we've had several conversations with our own pro services teams as well as partners about the criticality of ensuring that whatever solution we deliver, that it can be turned into a solution that partners can operationalize and not only, of course, make money on, but make that customer experience good. So yes, the intent is that we work with a company like SASE OpsLab that has built a economic framework that makes it easy for partners to take advantage of from a licensing and a seat perspective, to not only spin it up on their behalf, but to potentially work with other partners to create a full operational service around it. And again, that's critical, especially in many of the locations where these end devices are located. There is an expectation that someone is managing those devices, right? It's not like in the United States where a lot of the services are self-managed. These SD-WAN appliances or endpoints are in many countries where people expect it to be just like a cable modem, right? Someone else takes care of it. They don't want to deal with it. So having that services wrapper around it is just expected. So yes, Netskope is making sure that when we work with SASE OpsLab, our partners are involved from initial deployment and sale all the way to the actual implementation and hopefully monitoring and management of the end-to-end solution.
I want to talk a little bit about, and we've touched on it a bit, of course, but let's get more future looking now. So on that note, how do you see change management evolving as a core part of, SASE lifecycle management?
Yeah, it's interesting because in my career I've gone from networking into applications and now into security. And the networking teams have always been much more forward thinking when it comes to automation. Security teams tend to be a little afraid of automation because the joke that we tend to say is no one wants to lock the CEO out of the network, right? So the good news here is that most networking technology facilitates and is built around the idea that it can be automated. And the criticality of this is that as that automation framework has extended its way up the stack and into security, customers have come to expect that if there is an issue related to security, that it is translated into some form of automated response or readiness to automate, right? It's like is teed up. So Netskope, as a company that offers both networking and security, both of these things are really important. So one of the reasons I worked with SASE OpsLab is that the entire architecture is intended to be built around automation and orchestration, right? I mean, anyone can write a script that will spin up tunnels. But as I have learned, again, my team has learned, does not mean that those same scripts are going to be great at detecting a problem, restoring around a problem, right? Instantiating around different use cases like planned outages or migrations. So this stuff all has to be automated. And when customers are faced with having technology solutions that are not readily automatable, again, they balk. Because their thought is, no, my environment is too dynamic. I do not have the time to manage these individual migrations. I don't have the scripts. I don't have the robustness of the scripts. So it's absolutely critical. Orchestration is only going to get more and more important, and customers' expectations of the framework of all of these components simply feeding off of each other and the telemetry that we have to say, oh, I need to make a change. Again, the time is now. Customers have that expectation today.
I gotta ask you about AI, of course. So in what ways, I know you're probably tired of hearing that, but in what ways can AI help with SASE infrastructure operations?
It's a good question. I've been mainly focusing on AI as a co-pilot technology. And I think AI is really good, as many people have said, at taking problems with lots of data that individual users would have a tough time of kind of breaking down and looking for trends and making sense of. I think, when you think about all of the network telemetry that can be surfaced to make a decision about whether or not something should be moved, at some point, the decisions need to be more than just, can my ping, my ICMP packet, reach and respond, and how long does that take? There's all kinds of other criteria, right? Am I seeing more losses on this connection versus this connection? If I move over to this connection, am I now in a non-governing compliant framework because I'm going to a POP that I really don't want to go to because of data governance rules or just business practices? And those are just some of the decisions that need to be made on the fly. So having an AI component that can look at all of this different telemetry and kind of create a playbook on the fly that a user can then sit down and say, all right, this is what I care about right now. What are you going to do about it? Or how are you going to change the logic to take that into account is critical. Because the reality is, if we write everything to be static scripts, that's not how the world works. So a static script is great until something fundamentally changes on the other side, and then it completely falls apart. So AI, its ability to do all of that forensic analysis across all these different data points, give the user a natural language interface to query and work with, and then make recommendations about what should be done, that is great. And in the world of networking, just like security, there is a lot going on. So having all that information is great, but having AI to make sense of it and give the operators and the decision makers a chance to come up with the general guidelines and guardrails for what is allowed and not allowed, and the logic kind of behind it, that's where humans need to be, and that's where AI can help.
In your role, how are you seeing for the future collaboration between vendors and technology partners shaping the next wave, the future of SASE delivery models?
I think the reality is we kind of talk out of both sides of our mouths, right? We say we want to do the best thing we can for our customers, but oftentimes if there's a competitive element there, there's always going to be a slowdown, right? Because the other things will always be more important. So, and this is human nature, this is business, this is corporations, right? So trying to figure out a way to make it easier to instantiate this stuff without necessarily requiring deterministic partnering is going to be key. And what I mean by that, let me break it down and not have so much jargon. If I have to rely upon another partner or competitor to actually do the coding statically with a team, it's going to take a long time. However, there are technologies like MCP or agent to agent, which enables companies to basically publicize the functionality of their product and enable other companies to take advantage of that by leveraging those prompt catalogs to say, this is what I need to do, and to just start building against it. And so it's actually a great time to be in an integration-based framework like SASE OpsLab is essentially doing across multiple products, because companies are exposing these tools for agents to be built against and for agentic workflows to take advantage of. So what will happen, and we're already starting to see this, is everyone's becoming open ecosystem, right? In the past, people would not expose these functions. It would be very much my engineering team is going to talk to your engineering team after a very long, prolonged, and painful NDA negotiation process, and then we're going to build. And now it's like, you can't do that anymore. Now you have to expose these APIs, to expose your telemetry, to expose the logic of your tunnels, to expose the routing functionality so that everyone can make these agents work. And so I think what will happen is it might not even be 5 years, but certainly over the next few years, companies are going to find that it's easier and easier to make their products work together. And what's going to happen is we're going to need technologists who are really smart about figuring out when it doesn't work well to address the rough edges. And so I'm excited because there's so many things that my company and my team would like to do. MCP and A2A and other technologies like that are going to enable us to move very quickly past the how do we build this and into what do we want to build. And I'm very excited about that. I know SASE OpsLab is already moving very aggressively to think about this and ways to bring this into or even broaden the way that you build products to make it easier for all of us to collaborate and make these flows happen, which would otherwise be, frankly, from a business perspective, very difficult to deliver.
David, I've got just one last question for you. It's a little bit more broad, but take it where you will. Looking ahead, what does the next generation of SASE operations look like to you?
I don't think it's any surprise, given what I just said, to think that a SASE stack of people and technology is going to be a merging, almost like a cybernetic merging of human and machine, right? The amount of data and data points that we're all trying to negotiate is staggeringly large. We have logs, we have partner logs that contain dozens of fields. And each one of those fields is populated with dynamically updated information and trying to correlate all those points. It's just becoming a fool's errand. And we're starting to see, all kinds of activity that could be, from a security perspective, perceived as malicious or at best, let's say, nonsensical at scale that we have to navigate. So when I think about what the future is going to look like, to me, it's like 2 or 3 really smart people sitting behind a bank of automation workflows and coming up with this logical combination of this is what I would do, teaching the system continues to go, moving on to the next problem. And it's almost like we become what we should have been all along. We're the expert troubleshooters automation team, right? It's our job to lay out the framework of what's acceptable, and we can start thinking much more logically about those use cases that are popping up that an agentic workflow is not ready to handle. And so we start coming up with all the emergency playbooks that, frankly, most of us don't have time to go through, right? We write them, we never deal with them again. The next time they come up is when something goes horribly awry, and we're like, oh, I forgot. That's what we were supposed to do. We haven't ever tried it. So I think what will happen is there will be a lot more gaming, simulation, expert advice, and frankly, more collaboration. Collaboration might not be explicit, but by virtue of the prompt books and skill books that we start to see emerging, I think this might actually be a great time to be a defender or an operator, because we're going to be able to take advantage of the way and the things that other people have learned without having to read a million articles in Network World or online, right? It's just going to kind of go through. So it could be very good, but I do think it's going to be a bumpy ride in the middle. And again, having experts like SASE OpsLab who look at these requirements, can make sense of them immediately, is seeding the ground for the rest of us to take advantage of sort of the technology and techniques that you're bringing to bear. And certainly Netskope is looking forward to being one of those that are able to take advantage of your understanding of what that agentic enabled network operations center can do for delivering SaaS solutions.
Now, I love that beautiful picture of the future that you painted. Like, where do I sign up for that? Can we fast forward to that part?
Yeah, let's get through all the painful how do you use Gen AI, right? Let's just get right to the magic that supposedly promises for everything. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, again, David, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. That's all I have for you, and appreciate you being here.
You bet. All right, thanks so much.